So good afternoon and welcome to SYN243, Simplify Application Access with NetScaler Unified Gateway, Tips from the Field. My name is Jarian Gibson. I'm an independent consultant based out of the Kansas City area. You can email me, jarian@jariangibson.com, or reach me on Twitter @jariangibson. And I'm presenting today with...
I'm Eduardo Molina. I'm an EUC architect for Round Tower. We're based out of Cincinnati, Ohio.
And we have Andrew Morgan today, who was originally supposed to be presenting. I'm filling in for him because he could not make it here this week. So him and Eduardo did the main collaboration on this session, and I came in later once Andy found out he wasn't going to be able to make it. So thanks to Andrew Morgan. You can follow him out there at Andy Morgan, or visit his website, or email andrew@andrewmorgan.ie.
So today, basically, we're going to go and review a little bit about what's Unified Gateway. The new feature that everybody was excited about in 11. I want to start by saying, 11.1 was announced today. So this is based on 11.0.x65 in this case. So there's a few things that once 11.1 hits the GA will change a little bit. So this is based on that. We're going to look into how it works, how you deploy it, the difference between the three access methods that you will have with the solution. And finally, we're going to see a little bit of control. How can we give some things to one user and different things to a different user through using demos and screenshots that we have pre-recorded for the session. So today's requirements, everybody, customer partners, that we're being asked, hey, I have 5, 6, 7 different things that I want to access. I don't want to tell my users, when I was a customer, if I want a VPN, I go to this URL and I use this tool. If I want to access my Citrix applications, I go to a different URL, I use a different tool. If I just want to have access to a website, I don't have that method, so I still have to VPN. If I need to go to my Office 365, I'm hitting a different URL. So we're bombarding our users with tons of URLs. We're bombarding our users with tons of applications that we have to somehow deploy and maintain, right? SCCM has done a lot of work for us to automatically deploy agents. So this is basically creating a very convoluted scenario. And now with mobile devices, how do we access things? Which application do I access from my mobile device? What I don't access from my mobile device? So Unified Gateway basically is giving us that single URL, that single point of access that you can tell your user, just go here and you're going to have access. It's going to have that centralized access methods, that SAML token that will allow you to provide access to the user to multiple things like email on-prem or in the cloud. It's going to give you access to your client applications that is hosting as software as a service in somebody's cloud. And of course, we're now giving you also the access to the regular things like your VPN or your Citrix published applications. So what are we trying to do with Access Gateway, or why do we implement Access Gateway? The first thing, single point of entry to our organization for employees, for contractors, for everybody. That's the main thing, is you give everybody a very controlled access on a single URL. Security loves it. It's like, oh, I don't have to monitor 5, 6 different things. I need one URL, and all my users are coming through that URL. Provide access to SaaS applications, Salesforce, Office 365, single access. Provide access to some other customers to my internal applications, such as SharePoint, right? Everybody has a SharePoint environment. So if I want to present somebody with just SharePoint, I can do it that way. Single sign-on. Single sign-on is super important because we want to control how do I log into my Salesforce.com or how do I log into my email that is hosted on-prem for now. So that's very important. And also using context switching, we now can control through AAA authentication and group membership, what do you actually get? So you're a contractor, you don't need a VPN, all you need is access to my SharePoint environment. That's the only thing I'm going to give you. And all I need to do is make you a member of a group. So what do the architecture looks like? It's pretty simple, right? Doesn't matter where you come. We're still, any device from any location. You have a single URL, or what Citrix called the one URL access. Then you have the NetScaler that is, in this case, has a context switch that is going to create 2 different access methods. You have the gateway virtual server, or you have the load balancing for stuff, or reverse proxy for your internal resources. And that, in the back end, is connected to all my on-prem or in the cloud services like my web apps or my enterprise apps, my ERP system, or my regular presented applications.
One thing I want to point out too, go back real quick to that slide, is even though this slide says mobile apps, that's usually more access into your Zen apps and desktop apps and so forth. That doesn't mean Zen Mobile. The Unified Gateway right now does not work with Zen Mobile. Hopefully we'll see that later on. But Unified Gateway is not compatible or supported with Zen Mobile as it is today.
And that is a very good point, right? We're talking about Unified Gateway and not Zen Mobile. We're also not talking about just the pure reverse ICA proxy from the Zen app and Zen desktop side of the house. So once the user logs in, what does the user get? Well, the user gets depending on configuration, if you don't do any configuration, the user is going to get 3 options. That's the 3 options we're going to be talking throughout the rest of this session is, do I get a full VPN? Do I get a clientless access VPN? Or do I get a virtual applications on desktop? So let's dig into those a little bit more. So what is full VPN? It's an SSL VPN, has been around for a while. IPsec is dying, or at least that's what Cisco wants to tell us. And SSL VPN is the next big thing. So we want to use that. We want to deploy that on people with laptops and desktops. Most likely, if those are laptops and desktops that are owned by the company, it's an easy thing. You take the gateway application, you package it in SCCM, you make it Parquet, your master image, and you deploy it to it. It's done through an application that is installed. There's a Mac client, there's a Windows client, and that application keeps that session open.
Now, even though this doesn't support Zen Mobile, you can deploy the mobile VPN client through MDM and set up a per-app VPN, on-demand VPN to connect through the Unified Gateway, but that's it. It really does not support the NetScaler Gateway, or the Zen Mobile doesn't support the whole Unified Gateway architecture behind it.
So the other option is a clientless access. And this is a great use case when you have to provide access, a very limited access to contractors. For example, in a company I work with, we needed to provide our SharePoint administrator, which was an external entity, access to that SharePoint site. But we didn't want to give him anything else. Just SharePoint, you're going to log in, you're going to develop for us. Once you have development, we can go look into the development code and push it into production. So what we did is we give them clientless access to one specific resource, and that was our SharePoint development center. So that's clientless. It's for reverse proxy. It actually hides every URL that you put into it, and it masks it inside of your URL. So the user doesn't really know where it's going. They just see a URL that is masked out. And it works fantastic for SharePoint. It works fantastic for the OWA. So if, for example, imagine that your CEO or your CIO is traveling, he goes to a kiosk on an airport and wants to check their email really quick because he needs to send something bigger, you can give them access through clientless by checking the computer belongs to the domain or not. And then you are on OWA, the user can use it like if it was sitting inside of the office on a full-blown OWA, sorry. And finally, what we're very common with, the old access gateway, the old, the now retired Citrix Secure Gateway. That's the other functionality you can get where the user will log in and just see applications, click on it, and then your ICA client, your receiver, will open. We call it advanced on the Unified Gateway because you get it tied into HDA inside. You get that history, you get that information additional to your just regular ICA connections that can be leveraged through the Unified Access Gateway. The other part is also advanced because it's using some of the platinum features that the NetScaler provides as part of the licensing. You also have smart control, same thing to decide what applications you get access to and what applications you don't get access to. VPN control. So as we mentioned, it's a downloadable application. You can deploy it 2 different ways. If the user is logging in for the first time and it has all the security content, then you can actually automatically download into that computer, or whether it's a Windows or a Mac, or you can actually apply an SCCM package ahead of time and do pre-deployment. Going back to what Jeremy mentioned, from an iOS or Android, you can download the solution, the application from the Android store or from the App Store.
Yeah, just tied in through MDM, you can force the push tied to those app stores, and then, like I said before, configure it to do on-demand VPN per app, or just have VPN set up on there and managed through MDM.
Well, one of the important decisions that we usually talk to the customers to make about, is do you want to do, what type of DNS are you going to do? Do you want to split DNS? Meaning, if I'm trying to hit a resource that is inside my network, I'm going to use my VPN tunnel. But if I'm going to google.com or to my newspaper, my ESPN, go outside. Depending on the security of the company, you might need to drive everything to the VPN. Other companies with more relaxed security, you can make that split. So it's important when you're deploying these type of solutions that not only from a technology perspective, but also from a security perspective, you talk to others on your company, the security guys, the network guys. When you deploy this, it's basically based on policies, and these are some of the default policies that you can see based on the wizard that we're going to deploy here in a second. The important call out here is it doesn't automatically deploy the micro VPN or the VPN for the mobile device. So that's an additional policy that you have to create to enable that send mobile push that the mobile device can actually establish a full VPN tunnel. And that's through the NSG IOS plugin that you have to create that specific policy to allow for that VPN session to be created. So again, let's go through a quick demo of, and again, we're just doing PowerPoint because of time, but this is actually, we recorded that session. We went back, step by step. We're going to talk about how we use the wizard and what actually you still have to go back and edit the manual way because it's not part of the wizard anymore. So first, when you log into your NetScaler, in this case 11.0.65, you're going to have those 3 integrated Citrix products. And that's where we said, hey, we're basing this demo on the Unified Gateway. We're not talking about SYN Mobile. We're not talking about the SYN App and SYN Desktop. So you click on it, it's going to come up and say, hey, this is what is happening, which is kind of nice because as you can see on the right-hand side, you have a pre-created one, tell you how many STAs you have, whether they are up or down. It also gives you authentication and give you users that are actively connected. So by clicking on that, it's already giving you a glance of how is your Unified Gateway working for you. So we're going to create a new one. It's going to present us with a familiar slide. We saw that. So this is actually telling you, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And this is how we're going to secure things. So we click on continue. We put a name. We put an IP. It's not a public IP. I guess everybody's aware of this. It's usually the internal DMZ IP that you're going to then NAT into. After that, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to import the certificate. We're going to import a secure certificate because it's by default enabled on 443 only. We're going to select what our first method of authentication is, which in this case we select LDAP. You can also add immediately a second factor authentication. We can add it later as well. After selecting that, we're going to select a portal theme. We are also going to touch a little bit on how to customize it. And then we come to the applications. And what is an application from the Unified Gateway perspective? Everything is an application. A share file or a shell folder, the Storefront, a SaaS-based application, anything that you want to present through the Unified Gateway, it's called an application. So in this case, we're going to start by creating a Storefront. So we're going to create an application. The application is SYN App, SYN Desktop, and is based on Storefront. Here, what we're saying by selecting a Storefront is that it's not hosted inside the NetScaler. So NetScaler still has a web interface embedded option. I don't see a lot of people using it. I don't know if Jerry and UVC.
Not as much.
Yeah.
When it first came out, a little bit, but not as much anymore.
Yeah. So we select that. Then we just start naming, what's my internal Storefront name. It can be port 443 or port 80. You decide on that. What store path you're going to select. And it's very important here because when you start editing, it is going to by default put store web for everything, including the mobile device. But we know that on the mobile policy, we have to then go back and edit it and remove the web part at the end. Single sign-on domain, the name of the store, the IP for the STA, the Secure Ticketing Authority, the IP for the Storefront server as well, and then what protocol we're going to use by default. Once we do that, we then go back into the delivery controller. So how we're going to enlist the applications, we select that part, and then we click continue, and we go back to, hey, this is what we're going to create, click on done, and now we have a new application, which in this case is Storefront. So that's the first configuration, that's the first step to do it. And we click continue, and now we have a newly created session down here, Unified Gateway session. As you can see, there's only one authentication method. It has no active connections, obviously, at this moment. So at the end, what do we get by default? And that's one of the things that people very used to 10.5 get caught by surprise, because we put an IP, but when we look into the NetScaler Gateway virtual servers, the IP is 000. But if you guys remember a couple of slides back, it says that we're creating a context switch. So we're actually getting, as part of the wizard, both the context switch and the virtual server. So don't be surprised if you see, the 000 is normal, because the virtual IP is linked to the context switch, not to the virtual server unified gateway. So, so we went to the context switch here, and as you can see, my context switch has my DMZ IP. We also get by default 3 policies. The first policy is, what they call OS, or in this case is a full receiver. So if you're connecting through a receiver, you hit the first policy. If you are coming through a web browser, you hit the second policy. And if you hit if you don't hit any of those, if you click the other one, will be the full SSL VPN. One of the things that we recommend, when Andy and I were working on this in Nigerian, it's changing those priorities. Right now, as you can see, if you guys obviously remember, the priorities, they're going to be evaluated on their order. By default, the Unified Gateway create them both first at the exact same priority. We like to change that, and if you think your receiver has a higher priority than your full browser, you can change that. But that's one of the things that we always change is the priorities, and make sure that there's no 2 or policies with exact same priority.
Another thing to note here as well is that the OS policy, actively restricts mobile VPNs. That's something that it didn't do before, but it does now. So you're going to have to actually make another policy to allow those mobile VPNs, and we'll talk about that more here.
So things to pay attention to, and that's feedback that we have given to Citrix. Andy, myself, Jerry, and we talked to product management at NetScaler. This is a very secure environment. We're selling to our customers, to our security team, that we're deploying one of the most secure solutions out there. But by default, it's not coming with the most secure configuration. So, we're trying to push them to change this and give us always, Anton actually has a very good blog on how to make your NetScaler Gateway very secure. And that's one of the things, you be aware. By default, SSL VPN, SSL version 3 is enabled, and that's something that everybody wants to attack, is the first port of entry for attacks. So one thing that you want to disable as soon as possible. And then look into your SSL ciphers. Try to make that A+, rating on your security. It's one of the things that you definitely want to be very aware of. Yeah.
So basically, what we like to see with NetScaler, especially on greenfield, brand new deployments, is basically secure by default. Not leave it the way it is today. Maybe for existing, because there's some legacy stuff, you might want to leave it that way. But for brand new deployments, make it secure by default.
So other things to be aware of, right? Well, as we mentioned, SSL, TLS, make sure that you review that configuration. Make sure you decide what is good for your company, what your security people are comfortable with. HTTP versus HTTPS. So by default, it's HTTPS only. So if you have to create the redirection manually, it's not part of the Unified Gateway wizard. So you have to actually, if you want to redirect the users automatically from HTTP to HTTPS, you have to do it. Things that we have seen a lot. I don't know how many of you guys use Komodo or
Let's Encrypt or other certs. Yeah.
Some other certificates are becoming more recent or utilized. You have to import the whole chain. Otherwise, your Windows devices might work, but we have seen a lot of issues with mobile devices. We have seen issues with SYN Mobile, and obviously with Macs, where if you don't have the full chain imported into the certificate chain, you're going to receive errors that are pointing actually everywhere but the certificate.
Yeah. So general rule of thumb is just always have that full chain there and linked inside your NetScaler to avoid a lot of unnecessary problems.
And by default, everybody has access to everything. Everybody can do full VPN, clientless, and apps and desktop. So let's create AAA authentication groups to identify who needs access to what. Otherwise, everybody has access to everything. And two-factor authentication, very important, right? Very important. It's not part of the wizard. You have to create it separately if you need to. So when you log in, we saw this, right? You just get the 3 of them. By default, this is the very basic solution you're going to get. You're going to get the web apps on one side, the file transfer on the other side, enterprise websites and personal websites. Obviously, the name tells it. The enterprise websites are things that we as management, as administrators, are pushing to the user. Personal websites are things that the users can save, create on their own. So those one things that might confuse the users. We recommend disable them when you don't need them, because otherwise it's just garbage you have there taking more real estate on that user's screen.
Okay.
Web page paths, as we talked a little bit before, when you add web URLs, you can add software as a service with full SAML authentication, passing it through the NetScaler. You can add internal sites reverse proxy, or you can put external bookmarks. You can also do reverse proxy for RDP, which is actually something we're going to show here in a little bit. And the other things that you can have integration with is Storefront integration. We have CIFS shares, network integrations, and obviously email integration. One integration that we didn't cover here, but is very, very useful, is the integration with SAML on ShareFile. Just because of time, we tried to include it and we couldn't actually make it into. But that's very interesting because it allows you to actually present what is either on internal storage or in the cloud storage in ShareFile through the NetScaler.
Also, one thing too with ShareFile, and since more and more companies are using ShareFile, I'd like to see that as an option instead of the CIF shares, network shares pane, pull up your ShareFile storage instead.
So let's add a storefront a little bit more because, sorry, let me go back. As you can see on this screen, I only have web apps with storefront, and I have file transfer. So users will have to click on a link to open a separate tab. So if you guys remember back on the 9.5 and 10 days, you actually could have the 3 pane classes where you have on one of the panes was your web interface back in the day. So that hasn't been available until recently on 11. So that was one of the things that we wanted to show right away. So we're going to add a storefront. The first thing is you're going to go and open your unified gateway that we just created. We're going to edit it. And then we're going to go to the policies. We're starting with, obviously, the web browser because we're accessing through a web browser. We're going to edit the profile policy. And the only thing you have to do is you click on web interface portal mode and make the tick. That you can set it as normal. If you set this to compact, it actually doesn't change anything. So put it as normal is what we do. The other thing that you have to do is going back to your storefront servers and actually edit the web.config to re-enable iframes. That is a must-do, otherwise you will not be able to see it. So iframes needs to be enabled. If you don't enable iframes and just do the step before, you're going to see the new link, but the icons will never show up. So what do we get? Do we get now a new tab here in between where you're displaying your full storefront, exactly as if you were inside of it. So that's one thing is, please remember to re-enable iframes. File shares. So let's add file shares. We're going to go hit again on the Unified Gateway, go back to the gateway we just created, and we're going to edit an application. Again, it's just an application, and it's something as simple as adding your URL or your UNC path, sorry. One thing that we want to call out here is if you're creating something for everyone, for example, you want to present your home drive, what you can actually do is use environmental variables. By adding these, / my server, my share folder, and percentage username percentage, every time a different user will log in, it's going to actually map their own home drive. Then now you click on the file transfer link. One cautious here is, by default, and we gave a lot of feedback to Citrix, this part is honestly very kludgy. And when we talk to the customers, they're like, yeah, it's good, it's there. But if you do need a lot of file sharing out of a unified gateway, we recommend to use ShareFile. Because here, actually, what happened is when this comes by default, the whole tree is actually shrink, right? You have to actually go and click on the plus sign and click on the plus sign and actually drill all the way into your username. You're only seeing your username, but you have to go there, time and time again. So for my user usability, it's not quite there. The shareful integration is a lot cleaner.
Yeah, that interface looks very outdated. Needs some updating.
If you guys remember from 9.x, it's the exact same thing. It hasn't changed, not even the names. Oh.
Yep. So we had the same in the older access gateways as well.
Yep, exactly. So email integration, the first thing that actually when we were going through the labs and stuff, Andy and I and Jerry, and one of the things that we discover is, okay, we add the URL, you see the next step, but it never logged on. So we work and talk to a few colleagues. You have to actually, on your OWA settings, you have to make sure that Windows authentication is enabled, which means that if you go actually to open a web browser and you go to that OWA URL, you're going to see a authentication require prompt. If you get that, then you're ready to go to actually set it up on the NetScaler. Same thing, you go to the profile policy. Click. You go to the client experience tab on that part, and you basically add your internal URL for your OWA. And click on enable, and that's how then you're going to get a new tab here for email, and you're actually OWA presented. And this works through Clientless VPN, and this works through full SSL VPN. So now you're seeing that we have a way more robust solution for our users. Now they can see on a single pane of glass, I can see my published applications, I can see my files, I can see my email. I don't have to be going up and down bookmarks on my Internet Explorer or Safari or whatever browser you choose to use to get to those resources. One thing that is very important is if you guys are trying to enable the users to do either password change or enable out of the office, make sure you go to this Citrix article and edit those settings. Otherwise, it actually will not work. You will get this, something went wrong within that iframe on the Access Unified Gateway, sorry. So RDP session, that was something I was very excited when Andy said, hey, let's do RDP reverse proxy. Because a lot of companies present with RDP to contractors, right? All they need is a third party to come in and actually join over RDP. And before you have the Access Gateway, the RDP Gateway and all those things that you have to have as an infrastructure on your DMC and an Insight to do it. But now with 11.0, you can do your full reverse proxy of RDP without any of that infrastructure. NetScaler takes care of all that. How does it work? So basically, your laptop and listener is 3389. You can actually specify the port as part of the configuration file and the reverse proxy through the NetScaler. So we're going to create a server listener. We're going to configure the client for the RDP file, and then we're going to create a bookmark, which in this case is going to be an RDP bookmark instead of a HTTP bookmark. So same thing. On the NetScaler, actually, in this case, NetScaler Gateway policies, now we have underneath authentication and auditing, we have an RDP tab. So we're going to click on it, and we're going to add a server policy first. Under server policy, we're going to define my host name. That's pretty much, we define a name that the user will see. We're going to define the host name for it. Once we define the host name for it, we're going to, did I miss something here? Sorry. Yeah, so we define the host name. Sorry, let's go back there. Then we're going to go on back to my session profile. There's, as you guys, that's what I'm going, sorry. We have the session policy, session profile. We click on the remote desktop tab, and we select the server that we just created. We call it DC1. So now we have it there. And now we go back to the applications tab, and we add a new application or bookmark. But in this case, we're going to name it RDP // and the name of the server. So that's how we actually going around this. The other thing that we want to check here is you can pick any icon you want for it. By default, if you don't put one, it will be the R letter that will comes with it. And what you get at the end is you get a new RDP with this is the icon we put. When you click on that icon, we actually put it save the file first. This is the type of file that you will get, that your RDP client will get automatically If you put, open files automatically, that's what you get. You get a full-blown file. But it's actually a very useful session. You can also control it through AAA groups and give access to users. For example, if this is a clientless session, give access to the RDP and then do the reverse proxy that way. Filtering access. You want to take this? You want me to?
No, you're going on a roll. Keep going.
Thank you.
I'm just here to support you.
So the first important thing is by default, when you set up your LDAP policy for authentication, it does not enable group extraction. That gets enabled by changing on the group attribute member of. So, and then you have to put it on the set sub-attribute CN. That makes sure, and you can actually define it further down, how many layers or how many levels of nesting you want to do. Is it one level, 2 levels? And obviously, the longer you select, the more depth you select on the nesting, the longer it's going to take to log in. So we tried, in our experience, we tried to limit it to 1 or 2. And most of my deployments have been around 1 sub-level. So that's the first thing. Then you go back to the NetScaler Gateway. You click on it. You go to user administration. You click on AAA groups, and then you click on add. It's very, very important that the group name is identical as you have it on your AD. This is completely case sensitive. So it's very common that we will receive calls like, hey, I just create this AAA group and it's not working, it's not filtering, or it's not showing my resources. We go and we take a look. It's because it's not matching the case that you have on your AD session.
It's also space sensitive too.
It's also space sensitive.
So make sure, like he says, exactly as you see it in Active Directory, that's what you put in here.
So what I usually recommend to users is go to Active Directory, go to the group, hit F2, copy that name, and then paste it here. Because that way you're guaranteeing that you're not typing anything differently. Once we have the group created, now you can add any of the resources we have been talking about. So we can create, by clicking on bookmarks, we can add a file share, we can add a RDP session, we can add an internal or external application. In this case, we're presenting 2 examples, right? We're presenting a sample for the departmental drive. So because departmental drive is for a group of people, you cannot use variables like percentage username percentage. So you can create a group called finance and then give access to the full URL. So only the people that actually belongs to that group will actually see that file share on the list of files. Or you can do it for your website, right? You're a network administrator. You want to give users access to your Cisco management interface. So you can create a bookmark for them to go that way. You would then click on create, and now you can see that they have a new URL. You click on done, and that's it. When the user looks in, it's going to see a new icon that belongs to that specific group that is presented. When you look into the file shares, now I have a departmental drive. Same thing, you can go, you drill into it, and you see the files.
A nice, lovely view there of the file shares.
Advanced filtering. So advanced filtering is we're trying to make sure that we're limiting different protocol or different access methods to different users. So we talk about, by default, everybody has clientless, full SSL VPN clientless and access reverse proxy for ICA. So how do we change that? So basically what we're going to do is we're going to go and look for the policies that were automatically created with Unified Gateway. So you're going to click on NetScaler Gateway, policies, session policies. And then the way that I like to use it is I click on the existing policy first, and then I click on add, because that automatically basically copy all the information that is on the policy that was created and allows me to just edit what is there instead of having to remember all the different steps and create it. So every time on the NetScaler or any of the different pages for configuration, once you click on an item and click on add, it's automatically creating a copy of the existing item. So we're going to modify the session policy here. We're going to go to first, this example first is to remove clientless access from it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to uncheck clientless access. We're then going to go to client experience and go to the advanced settings of client experience. We click on it, and then we drill down, and we uncheck the left tick box. If you uncheck both of them, the policy will not work and will always show clientless access for everyone. So make sure that you unselect clientless access here, go to the advanced, and only unselect the left side. Then we're going to go, this policy is just to present ICA, my bad. Then we're going to go and select the security part. Sorry, what is the publish applications part? Make sure that the ICA proxy is select and on. That's basically telling the policy, all I'm doing here is ICA proxy. I'm not going to change anything else. I'm going to then fulfill everybody, all the information that it actually came from default when I click on add. That created a session policy. Now I'm going, that created the session profile. Now I'm going to go to the session policy and do the same thing. I'm going to rename it to the new one. In this case, we call it Storefront only access. And I changed now my profile to the new profile that we created in step before. By doing that, now I have a new, and I go ahead and go back to the AAA authentication groups. I'm on the authentication groups that I created. I call it Unified Gateway, Apps on Desktops. I created a group. I go to policies, and I click on Add Policy. And from the Add Policy, so I add a session policy, select the existing one I define a priority for. In this case, I went ahead and I select, as you guys remember, we just created a Storefront only policy. So we select that one. We create the binding of the policy. We click on End. And next time the user logs in, if the user belongs to that group, they're only going to see the ICA protocol, the ICA reverse proxy. The same thing works for Clientless. The same thing works for SSL VPN. I'm sorry about the S there. It's something Andy did not want to give up on. He said it's British and customization is with an S, not with a Z. So we had to go that way.
European thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Andy's from Ireland, by the way.
So why customizing? People used to have no option because it was so difficult. If you were hosting on the NetScaler, you have to learn how to download files, upload files, work with CSS files. So it was very convoluted, but it was not giving the personality of your company to your access points.
Yeah, make sure they persist between reboots and so forth. It wasn't an ideal way to customize it, but it's a lot better now. Would you guys agree? Yeah?
Yeah, that's good. So the easiest way, or the way we have done it is, again, same principle. We select a theme. We click on Add, which is basically going to create a copy of it. As you guys know, the default is a black one. The green bubbles is the one that existed on 10 when it came out. And then X1 is the new one that Citrix is showing every day with the 11 side of sessions. Something that's really nice on 11 is now Citrix is actually showing us when I change one of these fields, what actually I'm showing. So when you click on the new portal that you guys are creating, there is an icon here that says Help Legend on both the attributes and the page attributes, and it actually shows you this is the screen that you get. So if you're in doubt of what am I changing, what I'm putting a different field there, just click on Help, and it will show you, okay, this is my navigation pane, this is my navigation pane select tab, and so on and so forth. And it gives you a lot of information, gives you a lot of help. Again, back to now things are more streamlined. You don't have to know CSS. You don't have to be an expert on editing files to do this. Again, you can put anything on the background image you want. There are rules, and I think I have some of them in here. The other good thing is every time you add a file, if the file is not within the file size that is required or recommended for that section, it will not allow you to import it. Before you can import anything, and then it will just get chopped, and you have to go and figure out your size. With the new features for customizing, it will actually show you what size the file needs to be. One thing that we recommend a lot to remove some of that clutter that comes out of the box is disabling the personal website section and the personal file shares. If you guys remember back in one of the slides, we have enterprise and the other one, enterprise sites and the personal sites. So we can remove all that by just on the customization of your portal, unselecting those two things. And that immediately goes away.
And again, this is a nice, easy feature in the GUI in the past to remove those different things. You had to go back again, do more custom code. So this is also very welcomed.
When you're customizing logon page, super simple. Open that section, and you put whatever you want. On the second password is your second authentication. So in this case, I was testing with RSA, so I just put RSA token. But if in your case, your organization asks for a token plus a PIN, you can actually spell out token plus PIN or whatever you guys want to put on that second password authentication. And at the end, this is the default login screen if you're using X1. Not claiming that I did a lot to do this, but within 5 minutes, I was able to change the feel and look to something a little bit more customized, something more for our likes. When you compare, again, you have personal sites here, you have enterprise sites. There's a lot of things done there. You can actually take it and make it look a lot different. I turn off the personal sites. I put a background. I put a company logo on top. Things that will make the user, I am using part of my. Sorry, just got the 5-minute sign and I completely sidetracked me.
Squirrel!
Yeah. Sorry. So takeaways. Very, very powerful tool. Very simple to implement. You can actually go from, I just got my NetScaler, I have the right certificates, I have a public URL, to have something up and running within an hour. And that's not, I don't know if you have seen something different in Nigerian, but that's not stretching the truth. It's actually you can have something that the users kind of start testing or yourself kind of starts testing within an hour once you have the NetScaler up and running.
Yeah, a lot more streamlined, a lot quicker, time to value, a lot more improvement, especially on the customization. So it's very welcomed. Also, too, SAML Federation really shines with that. And don't forget about there's a session tomorrow, 11.1, the next version, and SYN243 tomorrow, same room at 2:30.
With that, any questions?
Let me watch the online stuff too, because we're streaming online as well today. Any questions?
If you want to use the mic so everybody can.
Hey, right now, Citrix keeps telling me to stay on 10.5. It's the only safe harbor build. Sounds like you guys are pushing out 11 to your clients. Are you guys having any issues with using 11?
What features are you using in 10.5?
Not using any specific features, but whenever I discuss upgrade with Citrix, they keep telling me not to because 10.5 is the only safe harbor build.
Well, there's that, and also it's going to depend on what things you're using. I always tell customers if you want to go past that to 11, make sure you test fully before you roll into production. There were some issues in the earlier builds, but they seem to be mostly covered now and fixed, so it's a lot better experience now than when it first came out.
So 11.0.64 or .65 should be the version that you want to go. But I have personally done about 3 migrations from 10.5 to 11.0.64 and haven't had major issues.
The customization you just showed us, is it possible to actually make it responsive design? So when you show it on a mobile device, it will automatically reorient itself to actually not just be shrink down. Or in other examples, if you have to give a specific example, the Outlook share file plugin, when you have to redirect to the NetScaler login page, it just shows part of the whole login page. And I haven't been able to find out how to actually make that login page responsive so it will reform itself to the window it's showing in.
Yeah, I know with some of the share file stuff, I know there's still some issues there with that they're working on, especially when you have to use my company credentials type thing, and it calls back to the NetScaler gateway for you to log in. Well, I know there's still some issues around that.
It simply just redirects to the login page, and since the login page is pretty static, it will just show big login page, and I'll have this little part of the window to look at.
Yeah, let me get back to you on the responsive piece too, as well on the share file stuff also. We can talk after the session.
Yeah.
So with 11.1, there's adaptive settings, but you still get like very very small fields. It's not like it's actually doing what a WordPress site will give you. That is a different look and feel. Just compressing things a little, so that definitely can be improved. Yes.
So for SharePoint and OWA, it supports NTLM authentication. Does it support NTLM authentication for other random websites that support NTLM?
Sure. There is actually a part of the configuration. There is a single sign-on Windows credentials that you will just click for it, and it will pass it to your. for example, corporate side or things like that. So if IIS supported or your web backend server supported, it definitely passes through. Yeah.
How about Kerberos?
I haven't tried Kerberos.
I haven't done much with Kerberos. I know there is some stuff in there, but I haven't done much on the Kerberos side yet.
Okay, thanks.
So if you're doing Kerberos, you might want to look into the SAML as well and just pass SAML credentials instead.
There's a question over here.
Yes.
What's that? Okay. All right.
Is there app firewall features in this one too, or it's strictly separated from this?
So there is app firewall within the platform, but it's also dependent on your licensing too. So app firewall is more of an enterprise add-on or a platinum feature. So that's a depends answer on it.
Yeah. And the app firewall is more to protect applications you're load balancing and you're presenting directly.
Yeah, like your public websites.
Understood. Yep. Thanks.
Do you still have to remove customizations before you do an upgrade?
I usually always do.
Yeah,
On the safe
you
side.
can, but actually, so when we were doing this, we were on 10 or 11.0.63, and then 64 and 65, and we actually, the theme carry over through all the in-place customizations, or in-place upgrade.
Yeah, me as a rule of thumb myself, I always just switch back to the default, upgrade, and then switch it back.
Yeah, because something I got from Citrix support was that any error that occurred, they would ask me, hey, did you upgrade, remove the customizations before you did the upgrade? And if I said no, well, they'll say, well, that's why you're having this error.
Yeah.
Insert error here.
Yeah, that's why I do the way I do it as a rule of thumb, is just kind of switch back to default, switch back to my theme, see if anything's broken, make a new theme or copy the existing one, fix it, and then roll it back out.
The other thing that they're mentioning right now, if you talk to Citrix support, is they do not recommend, believe it or not, doing the upgrade of versions within 11.60 and above through the wizard. They prefer that you actually do it through the command line.
You got a question?
We can, we're hitting the music, so we're out of time, but come over on the side and we can answer some more questions. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.